Picture this, all right? It's midnight in West London. Friday night is just bleeding right into the very first minutes of Saturday, November 23rd, 1991. You're standing outside this massive, quiet Edwardian brick wall in the upscale neighborhood of Kensington. The air is literally thick with cigarette smoke. Why? Because the paparazzi are relentless. They're just camped out there, cameras ready, flashing away, hoping to catch even a tiny glimpse of a man who had basically captivated the entire globe. And behind that wall is Garden Lodge. And inside Garden Lodge is Freddie Mercury. Just past that midnight hour, Freddie's press officer releases a statement that absolutely stops the world in its tracks. It read, "Following the enormous conjecture in the press over the last 2 weeks, I wish to confirm that I have been tested HIV positive and have AIDS." Man, what a devastating, emotional hook to a story that had been so fiercely guarded for years. And you know what makes this moment so profoundly heartbreaking? He made this choice to finally speak out, literally just 24 hours before his death. He didn't do it for himself. He did it to protect the privacy and the peace of his inner circle. Take a second to really put yourself in his shoes. Could you imagine bearing the weight of a fatal secret, knowing your health is failing, all while navigating this absolute hurricane of flashing cameras and front-page headlines? It's almost unthinkable, right? Okay, so let's dive into this explainer and trace the timeline of a deeply private battle fought by one of the most famously public figures in human history. To really understand how this ended, we've got to look back at how he built his private sanctuary. So, timeline check, back in 1980, Freddie buys Garden Lodge in London. This becomes his ultimate refuge. But then, 1987 hits. This is the devastating turning point. Freddie and his partner, Jim Hutton, are actually sitting together in a doctor's office, and they both receive their HIV diagnosis at the exact same time. It's just crushing. But he pushed forward. By 1990, despite immense physical decline, Freddie is right back in the studio recording the Queen album Innuendo. And that unstoppable journey, well, it leads us straight to late 1991, with his final public statement and his passing. Which brings up a really fascinating, kind of emotional question. I mean, if your entire life was a massive public performance, say you're the flamboyant, unstoppable frontman of Queen, commanding 72,000 screaming people at Wembley Stadium, where do you go to finally take the costume off? Where do you go to just be human? And this brilliantly illustrates exactly where that was. For Freddie, that place was Garden Lodge. The contrast between his two realities was totally jarring. Out on the street, you had these extremely cruel, intrusive British tabloids. You had papers like The Sun running these massive headlines like "The Sad Face of Freddie Mercury," plastering photos of him looking gaunt leaving a clinic, just constantly hounding him to confess his illness. But then, on the inside, safely behind those thick brick walls, it was a deeply quiet, totally normal domestic reality.
What's really amazing is just how normal this sanctuary actually was. When Freddie first toured the property in 1980, he was so struck by its peacefulness that he basically told them, take it off the market immediately, and paid the exact asking price on the spot. He transformed it, building this beautiful Japanese-inspired garden with a koi pond and these massive blooming magnolia trees. It was filled with these quiet domestic routines. You had Jim Hutton, who was actually a hairdresser by trade, out there happily tending to the garden. It was a safe haven for Freddie's beloved cats, too, guys like Oscar and Delilah. Fun fact, they actually had their own handwritten spots on his dinner party seating charts. I love that. It was just a space where he never, ever had to perform for the media. Jim was his quiet, grounding anchor, away from all the rock star fame.
And honestly, that quiet domestic life provided the grounding for what we really have to call his defiant final act in 1990. By this point, Freddie's physical health was severely deteriorating. But his artistic willpower? That remained absolutely unstoppable. He was determined to keep creating music for as long as his body would physically allow it. This sheer determination brings us to the recording of Queen's legendary track, "The Show Must Go On." Now, the vocals for this song are notoriously demanding. I mean, they are huge. Guitarist Brian May, who wrote most of the lyrics, actually looked at Freddie's failing health and gently said, Fred, I don't know if this is going to be possible to sing. And Freddie's response? It is the stuff of absolute rock and roll legend. He looked right at Brian and said, "I'll fucking do it, darling." He knocks back a shot of vodka, walks straight into the recording booth, and completely lacerates the vocal track in a single, flawless take. He could barely stand up, but his voice, it never wavered. So the creation of this final masterpiece unfolded in 3 pretty heartbreaking steps. Step 1, write a massive power ballad about supreme resilience. Step 2, record those flawless vocals, completely defying the ravages of his failing health. But Step 3 is where the physical reality finally catches up with them. When it came time to actually release the promotional video in 1991, filming new footage of Freddie was just physically impossible. So instead, the directing duo Darrow compiled this incredible montage of past music video footage spanning from 1981 all the way to 1991. It was a beautiful celebration of his legacy, for sure, but it was also a protective shield designed to hide his extreme physical decline from the world. Which brings us right back to November 1991 and those final 24 hours. By this point, things were grim. Freddie was surviving on the bare minimum of liquids. He was losing his sight, he was drifting in and out of consciousness. The decision to release that statement to the press right then wasn't about saving himself. It was a deliberate, totally selfless act. He did it to ease the burden on the loved ones standing around his bed, ending the media circus once and for all. So the crucial point here is the lasting impact of that statement. Deborah Gold, the chief executive of the National AIDS Trust, has actually called Freddie's announcement a true cultural touchstone moment. Back in the 1980s and early 90s, there was this massive hysteria and deep stigma surrounding the HIV and AIDS epidemic. By being honest on a global scale, Mercury fundamentally changed public perception. He shattered the stigma. He took this deeply upsetting private tragedy and turned it into an engine for worldwide awareness. Just think about this number for a second. 579,021 pounds. That right there is the amount of funds raised in just one single recent year by the Mercury Phoenix Trust. After Freddie passed away, his Queen bandmates Brian May and Roger Taylor, along with their manager Jim Beach, founded this charity specifically to fight HIV and AIDS. So Freddie's legacy isn't just in the music, it's a very real, tangible lifeline for people fighting this disease today.
But amidst all this massive public legacy, there's a beautiful, private coda to the story. Jim Hutton, Freddie's partner who lived with him for 6 years, published a memoir in 1994 called Mercury and Me, and Jim generously shared the beautiful, quiet domestic details of Garden Lodge with us. The cats, the gardening, those ordinary days. But there was one thing he flat out refused to share. He never revealed what was said in his final, private conversation with Freddie in those last hours. Jim held on to that secret, taking it to his own grave in 2010.
The music, the stadium anthems, the amazing work of the Mercury Phoenix Trust, those belong to us all. But that final conversation, that belonged only to Freddie and Jim. It's a super powerful reminder of the boundary between our public icons and their profound human vulnerability. And it leaves us with a question to ponder. In a world that demands so much of our public selves, what will your quiet legacy be? Anyway, thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. If you found this breakdown fascinating, be sure to subscribe so we can keep diving into the incredible stories hidden just beneath the surface of history. Catch you on the next one.